Okay, so if you are worried about not having toilet paper and you really can't do without it, first of all, you could. There are a lot of people around the country who don't have toilet paper as a luxury, and they find other things to use. You can use old cloths, you can use your hands, and you would just have to wash your hands really well. You can use old sponges that are wet, and then you could just make sure that you clean them really well between uses, or water. But really, you don't necessarily need it. But if this is something that you just absolutely need to have, and you're concerned about it, or you really just want to be more green, and just start making your own toilet paper, because it's actually kind of fun. I have to tell you, I've never actually done this before. All you need, so step one, gather your ingredients. I went around the house and I gathered a bunch of paper. As long as it's not shiny, so you can use newspaper, magazines, but it can't be shiny magazines. Like things like this would not work. This is shiny. Okay. Old bills, old pieces of paper. I used old checks that were deposited, shredded paper, so papers that we had in our shredder. And your paper doesn't have to be shredded. I'm just throwing this in there. But I've got all of this paper in my hair, soaking in water. I'm gonna let it soak for about 30 minutes or so. And I let it soak, and you can see that the water's kind of like inky. And that's just because that is the point. Like, we want to remove most of the ink from the paper that we're using. So just, again, like junk mail, bills, whatever you want to throw it in here, soak it for half an hour. That was step one. Step two, drink a glass of wine, okay? Because let's face it, you're making your own toilet paper. Step three, I went outside and I gathered a bunch of leaves and grass. With the help of your dogs, for real, gather leaves and grass. I know, it's so strange, but I guess when the leaves and grass boil and start to break down, the proteins, and I might just be making this up, the proteins or fibers or collagen or whatever, cellulose in the plant matter will mix with your paper, and that is going to actually make your toilet paper stick together. So right now, we're on step 4. Steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cuddle with your puppies, because they make everything better, even if you're stuck making your own toilet paper. And I've got my paper and my leaves and grass covered in water, sitting on the stove, and I'm gonna simmer this for an hour. While this is simmering on the stove, I'm gonna gather my other ingredients. So the other things you will need is, this is optional, but like a little bit of essential oil. This one's lavender, so your butt can smell nice when you wipe with your homemade toilet paper. Or you could use like tea tree oil, which has antimicrobial properties. You can also throw some witch hazel in there. But yeah, so a little bit of oil, that's optional. And then the recipe asked for baby oil, but I don't have any. So I'm just using coconut oil, which actually has antibacterial properties too. So these are the next things that you will need. You will also need a beach towel, a heavy board. So if you have like a heavy wooden cutting board, and you will also need something heavy. So, I mean, you could technically use yourself. And you actually need 2 beach towels. So you'll need 2 beach towels eventually. A paper stew is bubbling. Let's see. Smells like paper in here. Cooking paper. I'm gonna simmer this for an hour. And if you get like foam on the top, I'm not, but if you get like foam on the top, you're supposed to skim that off. So if I start getting foam, I'm gonna skim it off. Okay, you guys, It is simmering. It's been doing this for an hour. I still have no foam. So I'm just gonna crank this up. I'm just gonna crank this up right now. I've never actually done this before. I hope that doesn't do anything bad. We're just gonna crank this up and hope that this just continues to boil. This is supposed to turn into a pulp at some point. So we're just gonna keep hoping and praying that this actually works. Okay, so I don't really know what paper pulp is supposed to look like, but this doesn't really, it's not really doing it for me. So I'm gonna make my own step and we're gonna blend this. We're gonna blend it. Okay, so I blended this for like 10 to 20 seconds and that looks like pulp. So we're gonna do this for the rest of this. It's gonna take a while. Okay, so aside from the fact that I feel like at this point I would probably just choose to use my hands instead of my homemade toilet paper because this is taking forever. We blended it and I feel like that's the only way to go. Like, look at this is what it is now. This is like a pulp. Before I did this, it was just like still boiled shredded paper. So I think you need to blend it. So I took it out in batches. I put it in a colander, I drained it, and then I blended it. And now we're moving on to the next step, which is adding your tablespoons of baby oil or coconut oil or some other kind of oil. I'm gonna add 4 tablespoons per bowl. And then I'm also gonna add a couple drops of lavender oil for good butt mojo. Okay, so this next part I'm a little bit nervous about. I'm supposed to dump this pulp onto this giant towel. And then I'm supposed to put another towel over top of it. By the way, we may or may not have borrowed these from a hotel. And then I'm gonna put some boards on top of that. And we just so happen to have these wooden, it's almost like we were supposed to make our own toilet paper here, but I don't even know where these came from. But I found these heavy wooden boards and I'm gonna lay those on top of the towel, then the pulp, and then the towel, and then the boards, and then something else heavy to weigh that all down. You're also supposed to use a rolling pin to, after you put the pulp on the towel, lay the second towel over top, you're supposed to use a rolling pin to try to squeeze out some of that excess liquid. Well, I don't have a rolling pin, so remember that bottle of wine that we drank? You're just gonna use that bottle as your rolling pin. Okay, so I changed my mind and we were putting the towel on the kitchen counter. It seems much more logical. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna put the towel here and then I'm gonna put the pulp on top of the towel. And then I'm gonna use my rolling pin to flatten it out. And I can use a hammer if I want to punch out any like lumps, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm not that picky. And then after we do that, we're gonna lay the second towel right on top and then the boards and then the heavy things. Okay, 1 hour later, seriously, I'm finally done rolling out my pulp and I've decided that I probably would have been better off just baking bread and wiping my butt with that because this takes just as much time and you can't even eat this. Ah! Here we are. It's laid out on the towel. Now I'm gonna lay another towel on top of this and then put those 2 heavy boards on top of that and then something heavy. So you put something heavy on your board, there's my pulp under there, and you do that for 30 minutes. Okay, so that's been long enough. It's been about 30 minutes or so. I'm gonna remove my weight I'm gonna move my boards, and I'm actually then going to flip this whole contraption over so that this top towel becomes the bottom towel. And then I'm gonna remove this towel. Got it? So I'll remove the wetter towel. And then I'm gonna lay that out in the sunshine. You guys, this just did not work. We are just gonna have to use our hands. This is terrible. Look at this. What are we supposed to do with this? I feel like I just wasted a bunch of paper. This is just not good. Guys, just use your hands. It's gonna be okay. Also, I just found a staple in my toilet paper. Guys, this is just use your hands.